Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues. My name's Anthony. I'm an addict and an alcoholic, another bozo on the bus, and I care about you.
Yes, and I'm LouiLou. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm recovered for crystal meth and alcohol, and I'm always in search of balance. And each week we strive to foster a brave space where we can engage in conversation centered around topics of recovery.
And our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for more people in recovery by tackling issues sometimes used to separate us.
But before we do that, please like, share, subscribe, and ding that bell.
Tell your friends about us.
Please do.
You know what? Walk to your neighbor's house, knock on their door, and tell them about the podcast.
After you get your sugar.
After. And now the disclaimer. The thoughts and opinions expressed on at the CCC are ours. Oh my God. Okay. I'll tell you the disclaimer in a second. Lewis and I are tired.
Oh, yeah.
The thoughts and opinions expressed on at the CCC are ours alone. We do not represent anyone but ourselves. In other words, we're just a couple of friends behind a mic here to entertain you. And of course, everything we say here is for general information purposes.
Absolutely. For general information purpose.
Yeah. In other words, you know what? You're listening to a podcast. We're here to entertain you.
Exactly. And if you were entertained, then even better.
We're here to entertain, to connect.
Exactly.
Yeah. How are you, Lewis?
I'm good. Like you said, I'm a little tired, but it's like I am excited to be back.
To be back here?
Yeah.
Together?
Yeah.
You and me?
Yeah. How about you? How are you?
I'm pretty good. This is probably the best week that I've had in a very long time.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
It's always good.
Yeah, it's been a pretty good week. Because, it was like, I had like 2 weeks where I was like out of commission because I had shingles.
Oh.
Yeah, they were stress induced for sure.
I bet.
So I'm like back, so I feel better.
So is it like chickenpox? Like once you have shingles,
So yeah,
can you get them again?
Oh, I don't know about that, but I know if you get shingles, it's because you had chickenpox at some point.
Yeah,
I think so. Anyway,
well, I was vaccinated. Back when they were vaccinated for everything because they weren't worried about autism. I'm not one of those people. I don't believe that I'm going to be vaccinated for everything.
Did you just make us a pro-vax podcast?
No. For me personally, I'm pro-vax. I don't have any.
Give me all the vaccines. Give me all of them, even the ones I don't need, because I'm selfish.
Give them to me
because I'm greedy.
Give them to me a couple times.
Yeah, I want all of them.
Absolutely. I know.
Some back alley vaccines.
I know. Hello, exactly. It's like I'm all, and I was saying it's like once I get the vaccine, then I can vaccinate people with my.
Oh, but Lewis, we're not even 3 minutes in.
We don't have to be 3 minutes in.
So today's topic, is bridging the divide.
Exactly.
Abstinence versus harm reduction.
I know.
It's kind of controversial.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, we've had this conversation before, but today it's going to be a little different.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a little different because Lewis and I have had more experiences, more exposure. I don't know. It's not like I have. Well, do you have an opinion?
I used to early on, and I think it had everything to do with personal fear. Yeah. Because I was thinking like, oh wait, in my mind, I was thinking the way that I was doing it had to be the only way, because if it wasn't, then how when all of a sudden you're questioning. Because when you're looking for excuses not to do what you need to do, you will find them.
Oh, of course.
And so, but now I realized that it was necessary. Like harm reduction. I thought harm reduction was very important for me as a crystal meth addict.
Sure.
Because it took a really long time before I kind of was able to clear my mind and see that the thing that was doing me in was not good for me.
Yeah. And, there's research that shows that that a person, some people can go a period of abstinence, have a period of abstinence, and then return to use that isn't destructive.
Just before they die.
Right. And the other thing that comes up for me around this too is if a person is engaged in harm reduction, it almost feels, and you tell me what you think, it almost feels like there isn't room for them in an abstinence-based only program, right? Because you can have someone who comes in to the fellowship and to AA, and if they start to, like they're like, actually, I'm going to do a harm reduction approach, it almost feels like they lose their fellowship.
I feel like that's a possibility. I think that, like, what I know to be true now is harm reduction and abstinence are not separate. Like, I think that what I'm practicing now is harm reduction. It just happens that in my mind, what keeps me from harm is abstinence.
Well, yes.
I also think that, like, one of the things that I hear and I have heard on a regular is like, you know what, meetings are a safe space for you. And if you have to come and be high, that's okay. Come to these meetings. It's like, and a lot of people talk about they did that until they were able to kind of say, I need something different.
Why are you fucking with your mic?
Because it's not screwed on. It was moving. So yeah, I think there is room for individuals who are practicing harm reduction. It's just that they like, and this is where it's tough. If this is what you're deciding, you got to get some acceptance around the fact that there are people who are not going to be okay or understand that.
Yeah. And to your like earlier point, it can threaten someone's recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like it's, I may not have a problem with it, but I've decided, just like with anything, it's like, this is not a person I want to be around. Yeah. And that's each individual's prerogative, because there are people who practice abstinence that suck ass. And I'm like, we're good.
How about, how is a person who does harm reduction any different from like a friend who like drinks or uses? Right? Because we all have friends that drink. I guess using is a little different.
Do we?
I have normie friends.
I have coworkers. I have coworkers who drink. Like most of the people in my life are in sobriety.
Right.
I have friends from before, but I don't hang out with them. I don't actively like spend time with them. I think the difference is, and okay, underneath it all, there's no difference, but we understand that if you have a problem with the substance that
I see what you're saying.
If you have a problem with, then that, because
if your life is clearly messy.
I'm less likely to go out with you on an evening knowing that you're a ticking time bomb than if you got that under control. Now, that's not to say that this individual that is supposed to, like, I don't like the term normie. Normie implies that everybody else doesn't follow that as abnormal, and that's not true. I like to think Yeti. You have yet to experience the thing that's going to bring you to your knees.
So you don't think? Okay, there's a lot that you're saying right now. There's two things that. Well, the first thing that I wanted to mention is that how there's some folks who come in and out, in and out. I think that is a form of harm reduction, except that a person who comes in and out, in my experience, has a lot of shame and guilt when they come in and out. And that's because the culture is one of abstinence. And I think part of that culture is seeing a relapse as a form of failure, whether people are saying it or not.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I agree with you that 12-step spaces should be safer spaces for people who want to be sober.
Yeah.
And that's compromised when you have someone who's coming in who's like drunk or high.
Yeah.
As for people that are normies or people who don't have issues with like processed substances. I know you are. And we're on a podcast so no one can see you.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was doing it.
So when you have someone, I don't think that everyone, well, I do think anyone can develop an addiction, especially when it comes to like opioids, right? Like there's
and I do want to be careful when I say this idea of Yeti. Yeti means it may never happen. Yeti just means that I'm not going to call you a normie because I'm imposing, like, I don't think it's really fair, because I've met a lot of people who I thought were normies, and later on they turn out to be, and they go through what they go through. And so I am not going to make that judgment on them. I'm not going to compare myself to them. I'm comparing, like when I hear people say, "Oh, I want to do this." Like, there are some people who don't have problems drinking. There are some people who don't. Well, if you're doing crystal meth, or heroin or whatever. I don't think that's a recreational drug. It's like the first couple times you do it is recreation, and after that you are beholden.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Addiction is really tricky. I actually just had this conversation at work with some of my colleagues around how addiction is actually quite pervasive, and there's like more acceptable forms of addiction. Like how many people are literally addicted to technology and their phones?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Like,
and chocolate and candy.
Well, like food. They're all of sex. There are all these things that are kind of like more acceptable. And I think one of them is like an addiction to technology. There's that book that I mentioned last year, Dopamine Nation, by Dr. Anna Lemke. That basically it speaks to that, right? It speaks to how there is this addiction to dopamine, right? And it's, if you think about like Instagram, people who like post a lot, I think it was Chris Rock, actually, he said there was a time when what we wanted was love, and now all we want are likes.
And that's why he got slapped.
That's not why he got slapped. You leave that man alone. He is brilliant.
Is he?
I think he's brilliant. Yeah, I think he's a great writer.
I think that I used to think that he was. I just think that he was, but I also think that like this is a whole nother conversation. But
okay, that'll be our next episode.
No, it will not be any of our episodes, because I feel like he is one of those individuals that like
Chris Rock.
Yeah, he's like one of those individuals that he may seem good for black men and women, but he's not.
What makes you say that?
What makes you say that? Because he will throw us under the bus in an instant. The way his behavior, and it doesn't matter comedian or not, it causes violence towards black women. And this is why that went down. That went down. It's like it is not okay. It is absolutely not okay. It's like and folks do not understand why black people would feel the way they did about that whole situation with the Oscars. But it's like, you know what?
So you blame this conversation.
I'm not.
So you blame him for what Will Smith did?
No. Will Smith has to be responsible for his actions. But you know what? It's like if you provoke, then you need to be able to deal with the consequences. Hey,
but okay, we'll come back to that. But
let's go back to
they're like comedians. Okay.
Let's go back to
harm reduction.
Let's go back to harm reduction. Harm reduction is when I say to you,
okay,
do not speak on something about my wife that is an actual issue.
That's
harm reduction. The harm reduction, it means I need to be careful with what I say and how I flap my gums and blah 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 blah. No.
Yeah. So harm reduction.
You can tell we're tired. It's like I'm all this. No, back to harm reduction. It's like I like the question about what's the difference between like friends who drink and carry on, and there is none. It's like I believe, in what I know now, being in recovery long enough, is that I don't have to do anything I don't want to do.
That's right.
I do the things because I want a different quality of life.
Right.
And so if someone makes the decision, like, and I have friends who decide to go back out and drink and use and what have you, then I'm all, you know what? I love you. I don't necessarily, again, back to, I don't necessarily think that I need to spend any time with you, but doesn't mean we can't go to lunch or dinner or whatever.
I think your issue is with people who are in denial about their addiction.
Absolutely.
Because that's like someone who's in denial about their addiction, there are like issues with addiction.
But what's interesting,
they're not good candidates for harm reduction.
Exactly. Go ahead. And I don't get to decide that. And then I think also, I feel like you being a clinician and whatever, your understanding, I think people's definition of harm reduction, they're not in sync. I think there are some people that hear harm reduction as like, and they're like, what's your definition of harm reduction?
Okay. So harm reduction, and I'm going to use the word to define it, but then I'll define it for myself. But harm reduction is reducing harm.
Okay.
Right. So it's basically someone or a person monitoring their use in order to ensure that they're reducing the amount of harm that's caused to them by whatever the substance is.
Yeah.
Right. I don't have a more eloquent definition right now, but the point is the spirit of harm reduction, right, is to reduce the number of deaths, reduce the number of like infections or diseases that can happen, right? That's the goal of harm reduction, right? When we have needle exchanges, because it's in the public interest, right? We don't want people sharing dirty needles because then, we run the risk of having a hepatitis outbreak, and that could be spread through the community, right? So when we incorporate things like needle exchanges, or we have people that are giving sex workers condoms, or we have PrEP, or right, like those are all things that reduce harm. It's harm reduction. Doxy PrEP is harm reduction.
Absolutely.
Right. So that's the goal. The goal is just to limit the amount of harm that we do.
And isn't the goal, another part of the goal, hopefully to change behavior?
No. I mean, sorry, I said that too quickly. When you say change behavior, reducing.
So
reducing.
Ideally, this is where I am with it.
Yeah.
Ideally, if I'm here with my behavior, and then I start to reduce, and I see, and I start doing things differently, especially so that I'm not creating harm. Eventually, for me, and maybe I'm just thinking for myself. Initially, like when I first started, I was doing a Stonewall project, and I
remember,
and I was trying to, limit the harm. And eventually I realized that what I needed was to not do the drugs at all.
Yeah.
But it's like and one of the reasons, like I said before, like I had my issues with harm reduction, because it seems as though you had individuals who were not interested in changing their drug use or whatever. They were just using their drugs and then showing up to meetings and hostage holding.
Sure. And that I think would be someone who's in denial about their use and needs a better setting to work through those things.
And then San Francisco was really kind of like hand holding and making shitty behavior,
I do think,
making shitty behavior acceptable.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole other conversation, right?
Yeah.
But I want to get back to this idea of harm reduction. So one of the things that we do, where I'm currently at, is we'll do an intake, right? And during that intake, I am essentially asking you, what is your goal? Like, what is the substance that you're struggling with? And what's your goal? Do you want to abstain, or do you want to reduce the amount that you use or drink, right? Here's something that I want to share related to that. We often will get people who are literally life and death situations, right? Now, if you have someone who comes in and they have cirrhosis of the liver and they can't abstain, I'm happy if that person can at least have periods of abstinence if they can't abstain, right? It's a much more complicated conversation than that. And I think part of this for me is, I work in a hospital, and, we have patients that die all the time.
Yeah.
And I've never been face to face with that before in this kind of way.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So when I think about those patients, I always wonder, like, what would have happened if there was like a space for them?
Yeah.
Right. There are some people who, according to Alcoholics Anonymous, are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. I almost don't think that if you are going to, if you've been only focused on 12-step and you've been, like the people back when you said that in and out, I don't think that's harm reduction. I don't think that's harm reduction.
I mean, not
I think that I think it's wishful thinking, it's them making an effort. It's one of those things where it's like, if you're someone who is constantly struggling and you're not doing the work, and you're not thinking, well, what's an alternative,
Yeah.
Because there are programs that are specifically harm reduction.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're someone who is like, you're not even certain you want to quit, why are you doing 12-step? Why are you looking toward?
I think what like you're highlighting for me is the harm that 12-step can cause.
Oh, absolutely. And then, so it's causing harm because you are having expectations of it. And it's not because 12 steps is harmful.
No, 12 steps are not harmful, right? Like they've been very successful. Like anything, it's people, right? Yeah. And I think there are aspects of 12-step culture that can actually be quite harmful, right? Because as I'm listening to you, like it's clear to me we're both in AA. You're also in CMA. I'm also in SLA, right? So
look at you spilling my tea.
I mean,
no, I know. Yeah. I shared about it. You're spilling my tea.
I mean, we're pre-recorded. We could always. So
you gotta go back, play that tape.
So I'm, like, I get it. I'm in 12-step. It works for me, right? And what I'm saying is that the culture can cultivate shame, and it can cultivate guilt, and it can make the lives difficult of people who are already struggling.
We've kind of talked about this before.
Right.
I feel like...
Hold on. You've had plenty of airtime.
No. Well, really? I'm trying to catch up with you.
What were you going to say?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, now I forgot. No, I don't want to talk.
No, go ahead. No, you're going to talk because it's like, you're all, well, we got to do, this is a podcast. We don't want any dead
air. Yeah. So I do think there are aspects of the culture, because, like we're self-governing, we have no like leaders that are telling us what we can and cannot say. So you have harm that's caused because of this abstinence only, the abstinence only component, which is like related to a lot of different things where success is measured by the amount of days that you have sober. And what I'm saying is that works for me, that works for you. Mm-hmm. And there aren't very many spaces for people who struggle, right? Like I think there's this like added layer of difficulty for people who are struggling, and they come to AA or any 12-step program seeking help, and they're essentially like shunned or looked at weird, or, anyone who comes in and out numerous times, like there's like we're human. And so there's like, oh, well, there she goes again, and I don't have that perspective because that's not how I see it. Like addiction fucking sucks. It's very difficult. Mm-hmm. And I want to believe that everyone can pull out of it, right? The sad fact is that I've seen people die.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right? And I believe they could have gotten out of it, but they didn't, right? And so there's some people for whom addiction takes them out, and we see that all the time. We had a bunch of OD deaths, and then you also have people who are trying to get sober, who are sober, and then they end up committing suicide.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I think that's what I'm trying to hold here is that, 12-step works for a lot of people, and there has to be a space for people. Like 12-step isn't everything. There has to be a space, and there have to be conversations about something outside of that.
And we completely understand that. But if you're in 12-step, if you're coming to 12-steps meetings and you're trying to get what we have, of course, that's what we're focused on.
Of course, yeah. I mean,
like, that's like me. Okay, it's the argument with RuPaul's Drag Race. So what they're having, and I'll use this. Okay, so you had folks who, like RuPaul, created this outlet, and then all of a sudden they were upset because RuPaul didn't have trans contestants and didn't have cis contestants and things of that nature, and was upset that things weren't moving as fast as they wanted to. And the argument that I have is like, give it some time. But if this is not what they had in mind for this, then create your own thing, Then create your own thing. But like with going, like, that's the point that I'm making about like coming into wanting to practice harm reduction, but coming into a situation like abstinence, and then being surprised that people are feeling in some way about their abstinence. Because one of the things that's super interesting is like when folks who relapse constantly feel shunned because someone has decided to set a boundary. Someone's calling a boundary them being shunned. The thing about it is like, if I have fear around where I'm at, I have to back away. Mm-hmm. Sometimes like I say, I love you from a distance, and that's not a bad thing. Like, there's nothing wrong with folks setting boundaries. Now, if I'm an asshole and I'm judging you, and that's not what I do, I think there is room for people who struggle, because we all struggle. I just don't think that that's hand-holding and coddling. Like, I think harm reduction can sometimes feel like, you know?
No, it certainly can. Yeah. And what I'm saying, not to put too fine of a point on it, is that... Bing. Yeah. Not to put too fine of a point on it, it is that people, there aren't very many spaces for people to get help with addiction, especially like if you don't have insurance other than 12-step, right? And what I'm arguing is not that 12-step rearrange or rewrite it's like rules, not that we have rules, right? The only the only condition for membership is that you have a desire to stop drinking, and that's it, right? Absolutely. And if you don't have it, and I would argue that people who are engaged in harm reduction do have a desire to stop using, and they do have a desire to stop drinking, at least momentarily. But the takeaway for me here, at least what I'm trying to communicate, is that there aren't very many spaces for people who struggle outside of 12-step. Especially when you don't have insurance, or like any other.
But there are other programs,
right? But
if you have a problem, like some people decide they have a problem with the spiritual aspect, and so they go to programs like Smart Recovery, or like there's the
I mean, but you and I are talking about this as people who know addiction. We know the communities, we know the resources. You and I have both done nonprofit work. This is like our lives are centered around recovery. I do it professionally, and it's also personal for me. Right. And so, we're aware of those resources. Right. But I would argue that most people that are addicts and alcoholics who don't have treatment, they don't know of those resources. And I think what I hear you arguing too is that related to the work, which is, well, go seek help, right. And so I think there are a lot of things there too, right? There are barriers to getting help. And sometimes
definitely. No, I understand.
And sometimes a barrier can be the culture of a program. Yeah. So we're going to start landing the plane.
Absolutely.
We are.
The Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBTQ recovery community.
We provide programs and services that help change lives by supporting personal growth.
Our vision is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community opportunity and support.
You can find more information, including all the ways to contact us, at www.castrocountryclub.org/podcast.
Yes, and please look for new episodes. They drop like at midnight. It's like
on Mondays,
Mondays. Yeah, exactly.
Brandon's on it. We love you, Brandon. And as usual, listeners, we love you. We'll see you next time. Bye.